My parents stole my bedroom and called me useless, so I called police and kicked them out overnight. We are getting rid of the useless people in the family. You are the first, my brother said as my parents laughed. The only useful thing about you is your money, so I said perfect, then start packing your things because this is my house. My name is Adrian Castillo. I am 31 years old. I work as a project manager at a construction company, and this is the story of how I learned that the worst parasites can share your own blood. I bought my house when I was 28 years old. It was not just any house. It was a beautiful 2-story property with 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, a large yard, and a swimming pool. I work between 50 and 60 hours a week. I earn $8,500 a month, an excellent salary for someone my age, but one I earned with blood, sweat, and sleepless nights finishing projects. The house was my pride, my achievement, the physical proof that all my sacrifice had been worth it. I spent 3 months decorating it exactly how I wanted. The master bedroom was spacious with a private bathroom, a walk-in closet, and a balcony overlooking the yard. It was my personal sanctuary. I left the other 3 rooms as guest rooms, thinking that I would eventually start a family and fill them with children. For now, it was just me enjoying my space, my freedom, my success until my parents showed up at my door. My father, Hector, was 58 and had been a mechanic all his life. My mother, Alicia, 56, had worked as a seamstress. Both had taken early retirement at 55, citing health problems that were never very specific nor backed by doctors. My younger brother Bruno was 26 and had never held a job for more than 6 months. He always had excuses. The boss was unfair. The CO workers were envious. The job was beneath his potential. The reality was that Bruno was a slacker who lived with my parents without contributing a single thing. One Saturday afternoon, the 3 of them arrived at my house unannounced. "Adrian, we need to talk," my father said seriously. "What is wrong?" I asked, letting them into the living room. "They are raising our rent," my mother explained. "From $1,000 to $1,600. We cannot afford it on our pensions. It is too much." "And Bruno?" I asked, looking at my brother, who was lounging on my sofa, staring at his phone. "Cannot he get a job and help?" "I'm looking," Bruno mumbled without looking up. "But there is nothing good available." "Bruno is waiting for the right opportunity," my mother defended him. "He cannot just take any mediocre job." "So what are you going to do?" I asked. My father and mother exchanged glances. We were thinking, well, you have this huge house, 4 bedrooms, you live alone. Maybe, just maybe, we could stay here temporarily while we find something cheaper. I should have said no. Every alarm in my head was screaming at me to say no, but they were my family. And the conditioning that family helps family was too deeply ingrained. "Okay," I said finally, "but it is temporary, 6 months maximum, while you look for another place." "Of course," my father promised, "only 6 months." They moved in a week later. I gave them 2 of the guest rooms, one for my parents, another for Bruno. I left the 4th room as a backup office. "This house is incredible," Bruno said, looking at the pool. "Adrian, you are so lucky to have all this." "It is not luck," I corrected him. "It is hard work." I established some basic rules. Clean up after using the kitchen, respect private spaces, contribute to the household chores. They all nodded in agreement. The first 2 weeks were tolerable. Then the problems started. I would leave for work at 7 o'clock in the morning and return at 7 o'clock in the evening, sometimes later. I worked hard, managed multi-million-dollar projects, dealt with difficult contractors, and constantly solved problems. Meanwhile, at my house, my family was living like they were at a vacation resort. I would come home to find them by the pool, sunbathing, swimming, laughing. The kitchen was a disaster, with dirty dishes piled up. The living room was scattered with junk food bags. "Could you please clean up after you eat?" I asked after the 2nd week of this. "We are relaxing," Bruno said. "You can do it later. It is not like you get home early from work anyway." "I get home at 7 o'clock in the evening," I said. "That is not early compared to people who work until midnight." "It is," my father said. "Do not exaggerate, Adrian." I began to realize that I never saw any of them clean. They never cooked. They ordered takeout with my credit card, which they had borrowed without permission. They never did their laundry. They used my washer and dryer but would leave wet clothes in there for days. And they spent. God, how they spent. My electricity bill, which was normally $180, shot up to $420. The pool pump was on all day. The air conditioning was constantly set to 18 degrees Celsius, 64 degrees Fahrenheit. All the lights were on. The water bill went from $90 to $210. Long showers, the pool being refilled weekly, the yard being watered excessively, the food. I used to spend $400 a month on groceries. Now I was spending $1,100, and that is not counting the countless times they used my card to order delivery. "Could you contribute to some of the expenses?" I asked after the first month. "The bills have tripled." We do not have any extra money, my father said. Our pension barely covers the basics. Bruno, I asked, have you been looking for a job? I'm waiting to hear back from some applications, he said vaguely without taking his eyes off the television where he was playing video games. And the worst part, the comments started. Adrien is always working, my mother said one night at dinner. He is never home, never enjoys life. What is the point of having money if you never have time to spend it? Exactly, my father agreed. We know how to live. Look at us enjoying every day, relaxed, happy. That is real life, not locking yourself in an office like a corporate slave. I work to pay for this house, I said defensively. To pay the bills. To support you all too, apparently. Oh, always so dramatic, Bruno said with a sneer. As if maintaining a house is the end of the world. Relax, brother. Enjoy life a little like us. You can enjoy life because I pay for everything, I pointed out, feeling my frustration build. You are so resentful, my mother said, shaking her head. You have always been so bitter. That is why you do not have a girlfriend, you know. No one wants to be with someone so obsessed with work and money. Her words hurt more than I wanted to admit because they were right about one thing. I had no social life. All my time was spent working and now supporting 3 perfectly capable adults who refused to do anything productive. The temporary 6 months passed, turning into 8 months, then 10 months, then a year. When are you going to look for your own place? I asked in the 11th month. Why? My father asked. We are comfortable here. You have plenty of space. What is the problem? The problem is that this was supposed to be temporary, I said. Family helps family, Adrien, my mother said. You should not be keeping track of how long we have been here. That is ugly. I felt trapped, guilty for wanting my space back, resentful for being the only one working while they lived like royalty on my dime. But the worst was yet to come. It was a Friday after a particularly brutal week at work. I had been averaging 4 hours of sleep a night, managing one crisis after another on a major project. I was exhausted, physically and mentally drained. I got home at 9 o'clock in the evening, later than usual. All I wanted was to take a shower and collapse into my bed. I went up the stairs to my master bedroom, opened the door and froze. My room was completely different. My furniture had been replaced with my parents' furniture. My bed had been swapped for their king-size bed. My clothes were no longer in the walk-in closet. What the hell, I muttered, completely confused. I walked out into the hallway and went to one of the guest rooms, the one that had been my parents'. I opened the door and found all my belongings packed in boxes. My clothes, my books, my personal items, all carelessly shoved into about 15 boxes. I went downstairs, my exhaustion replaced by adrenaline and rage. I found my parents in the living room watching television as if nothing had happened. What did you do to my room? I asked, my voice tense. Oh, that, my father said without turning around. We decided we needed the master bedroom. It is bigger, has a better bathroom, and there are 2 of us. It makes more sense for us to have it. What? I said, sure I had misheard. You moved all my things without asking me? Adrien, do not be childish, my mother said. It is just a room. It is my room in my house, I exploded. You cannot just take my things and move them without my permission. God, so dramatic, Bruno said, coming down the stairs. He had apparently heard the shouting. Brother, it is just a room, chill out. It is not just a room, I said, feeling the rage bubbling up. It is my room in my house that I bought. Technically, Bruno said with a smug grin. But family shares, right? And frankly, brother, we have been talking. We have come to a conclusion. Something in his tone put me on high alert. What conclusion? Bruno looked at our parents, who nodded. Then he looked at me with an expression I can only describe as pure contempt. We are getting rid of the useless people in the family, he said slowly, savoring every word, and you are the first. The silence that followed was absolute. I stood there paralyzed, processing what I had just heard. What? I finally managed to say. You heard me, Bruno continued, clearly enjoying this. We have decided that you do not contribute anything of real value to this family. All you do is work, work, work. You are never present. You never spend time with us. You are boring, obsessed with work, with no social life or friends. The only useful thing about you is your money, my father added with a cruel laugh. My parents laughed. They actually laughed as if this were a hilarious joke. Exactly, my mother agreed, smiling. You contribute money, which is useful. We will not lie. But as a person, as a son, as a brother, you are basically useless. All you do is complain about the bills, about cleaning, about working. It is exhausting to be around you. So, we decided it is time for you to go, Bruno said, crossing his arms. We have already packed your things. You can take them today. Find an apartment or something. We will stay here where we belong. I just stared at them, unable to fully process what I was hearing. My own family, my own blood, was kicking me out of my own house, and they were laughing. Something inside me snapped. not with sadness, but with absolute clarity. All the rage, the resentment, the frustration of the past few months crystallized into a moment of perfect calm. "Perfect," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "Perfect," Bruno repeated, clearly expecting more resistance. "Yes, perfect," I said, looking each of them straight in the eye. "First of all, start gathering and packing your things because this is my house. It is in my name. I pay the mortgage, I pay all the bills, and you are nothing more than tenants whom I have just decided to evict." Bruno's smile vanished. My parents turned pale. "Second," I continued, pulling out my phone, "I am cutting off all the monthly allowance I was foolishly transferring to you. It is over, and I am freezing all the automatic payments I set up for you." "Adrian," my father started, standing up. "I am not finished," I said in a voice of steel. "Third, you have exactly 1 hour to pack your essential belongings and get out of my house. You can come back for the rest tomorrow with police supervision. But tonight, the three of you are leaving." "You cannot do that," my mother shrieked. "We are your family, we raised you. This house belongs to us as payment for everything we did for you." I laughed, a bitter, humorless laugh. "Payment for raising me, that is what you think? That I owe you this house, for doing the basic job of parents you chose to be when you decided to have me? Ungrateful," my father spat. "After everything we sacrificed for you. I have given you $48,000 in the last year," I said, my voice rising, "plus another $13,000 in food, utilities, and all the expenses that tripled since you arrived. That is $61,000 in 1 year for 3 perfectly capable adults who chose not to work and live like parasites off my effort." "We are not parasites," Bruno shouted. "This situation benefits everyone." "Everyone?" I roared. "How does it benefit me to have 3 leeches living in my house, spending my money, disrespecting my space, and now trying to steal my own home? Tell me how that benefits me." "It was all a joke," my mother said quickly, seeing that things had spun out of control, her tone shifting to one of pleading. "The part about kicking you out was just a joke. We did not mean it." "A joke?" I repeated. "Packing all my things without permission was a joke? Stealing my room was a joke? Calling me useless was a joke? We were just playing around," Bruno insisted, but his confidence was gone. "Come on, brother, do not take it so seriously." "You have 59 minutes, I said, looking at my watch. "I suggest you start packing." "Adrian, please," my father begged. "We have nowhere to go. We do not have money for a hotel. Do not be cruel." "Cruel?" I asked. "I am cruel. You tried to steal my house and call me useless, and I am the cruel one?" "You have no heart," my mother said through tears. "Your own family on the street. Is that what you want?" "What I want," I said firmly, "is my house back, my life back, my dignity back. You now have 57 minutes. No one moved. They just stood there staring at me with a mix of shock, fear, and what seemed to be the slow realization that I was completely serious. "You do not believe me?" I asked. I took out my phone and dialed 911. "No," my father shouted. "Wait, 911? What is your emergency?" I heard the operator's voice. "Yes, I need officers at my address," I said calmly. "I have trespassers on my property who are refusing to leave and I need help removing them." "Adrian, no," my mother pleaded. I gave my address to the operator. "Yes, there are 3 people. No, they have not been violent yet, but they are refusing to leave my private property. Yes, I will be waiting, thank you." I hung up. I looked at the 3 of them. "The officers are on their way. You have until they get here to decide if you want to leave on your own or if you would prefer to be escorted out. Your choice." For the first time, I saw real fear in their eyes. "Son, please," my father said, his voice breaking. "Do not do this. We are family." "Family does not try to steal your house," I said coldly. "Family does not call you useless. Family does not live like parasites off your hard work. You stopped being my family the moment you decided I was disposable." They finally started to move. They hurried upstairs, pulling clothes from drawers, stuffing things into suitcases. I could hear them arguing upstairs, blaming each other, panicking. 15 minutes later, I heard sirens outside. 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of my house. I went out to meet them, showing them the deed to the house, explaining the situation. The officers were professional and understanding. "Do you want to press charges?" one of them asked. "I just want them gone," I said, tired. The officers went inside. My parents and Bruno came down with half-packed suitcases, their faces a mixture of humiliation and rage. "Sir, ma'am, young man," one of the officers said, "the property owner has requested that you leave the premises. You can take your personal belongings now and coordinate to pick up the rest at another time, but you need to leave tonight." "Officer, we are his family," my father tried to argue. "He cannot just kick us out like this." "Legally he can," the officer said firmly. "This is his private property. If you are not owners and do not have a lease agreement, he has every right to ask you to leave. You can do so voluntarily now or we can escort you. Your decision." They left with 3 suitcases filled with rage, humiliation, and resentment. but they left. Before leaving, Bruno turned around. "You are going to regret this," he said with venom. "Someday you will be alone and need family, and we will not be there." "That is the idea," I replied. I closed the door behind them and heard the police cars drive away. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had heard in months. The next few days were a whirlwind of changes. I changed all the locks. I canceled the additional credit cards I had given them. I froze all automatic transfers. I changed the passwords to all my bank and streaming service accounts. I received 47 calls from my mother in the first 3 days. 32 from my father, 18 from Bruno. I blocked all their numbers. 3 weeks later, my Aunt Elena called me. "Adrian, what happened? Your mother called me crying." I told her the whole story unedited, without softening it, everything. "My God," she said when I finished. "I had no idea it was like that. Your mother told a very different story." "I am sure," I said. "Do you know where they are?" she asked. "No," I admitted, "and honestly I do not care." "Bruno left," my aunt informed me. "As soon as you kicked them out, he left for another city. He left your parents completely alone." The irony was perfect. The son they defended, whom they never criticized, who was so valuable, abandoned them the moment things got tough. "And my parents?" I asked, feeling a twinge of curiosity despite everything. "They had to rent a room in a shared house," my aunt said, "and they both got jobs. Your father is at a hardware store, your mother at a laundromat. They are working full-time to pay for rent and food. Both of them working for the first time in years, facing the reality that money does not magically appear, that someone has to work to cover the bills." "Do you feel bad?" my aunt asked. "No," I said honestly. "I feel relieved. Relieved that they are finally experiencing the consequences of their actions. Relieved that they are no longer my problem." Today, 2 months after that night, that changed everything. I live alone in my house. My house. Every morning I wake up in my room, in my bed, surrounded by my things where I left them. The bills are back to normal. The electricity is $190. The water is $95. The food is $420. My bank account is growing again. I have peace, silence when I want it, order in my space, the freedom to live in my own home without feeling like a guest or worse, an automated teller machine. Do I miss my family? No. I miss the idea of having a family sometimes. But I learned something important. The family you were born into is not always the family you deserve. Sometimes the best family is the one you build yourself, of loyal friends, of people who value you for who you are, not for what you can give them. My house is mine again. My life is mine again. And I am finally free. And that freedom, it turns out, is priceless. Stepping back from the personal emotions of the protagonist, this sequence of events leaves us with a profound look at the quiet but powerful law of cause and effect that often unfolds inside families. At its core, the conflict surrounding Adrian and his family was never truly about a house, a bedroom, or even money. It was about the invisible expectations that quietly shape many families, the silent agreement that one person will carry the burden so that everyone else can remain comfortable. When this dynamic forms, it rarely appears cruel at first. It often begins with phrases that sound noble. Family helps family. Blood is thicker than water, or you owe us because we raised you. Yet behind these sayings lies an unwritten contract where one person becomes the emotional and financial sponge of the entire household. In many families, the tragedy is not the first moment someone takes advantage. The real tragedy is the collective decision to normalize it. When everyone benefits from the arrangement except the one person paying the price, silence becomes a shared defense mechanism. Responsibility slowly shifts away from those who exploit the situation and toward the person who dares to question it. Suddenly, the hardworking son becomes cold, the responsible sibling becomes selfish, and the one asking for fairness is labeled the problem. In Adrian's case, what unfolded inside that house was not simply laziness or entitlement. It was a system built on denial. His parents and brother convinced themselves that his success existed to support them indefinitely. When people begin to believe that someone else's sacrifice is their right, exploitation stops feeling like wrongdoing and starts feeling like justice. That is how toxic cycles inside families quietly grow roots. And this is the moment where the story turns from observation to reflection. Because if you are listening closely, you may recognize parts of your own life in it. Maybe not the same details, but the same role. The reliable one, the responsible one. The one who always says yes because saying no feels like betrayal. I know how heavy that role can become. When you are the dependable one in a family, people stop seeing your effort as generosity. They begin to treat it as your duty. And the first time you try to step away from that duty, guilt arrives like a storm. You hear the accusations that you are destroying the family, that you have changed, that success made you arrogant. But sometimes the truth is far simpler and far harder to accept. Drawing a boundary is not the act that destroys a family. The unhealthy system inside that family was already destroying it long before the boundary appeared. What Adrian did was not cruelty. It was surgery, painful, dramatic, and impossible to ignore, but necessary to remove something that had been slowly poisoning his life. The courage it takes to perform that surgery is enormous. Because the moment you say no to people who are used to hearing yes, you feel like the villain of your own story. The conditioning of loyalty runs deep. We are taught that love must always mean sacrifice, even when that sacrifice slowly erases us. Yet there is another truth many people discover too late. Endless sacrifice does not guarantee gratitude. In fact, it often produces the opposite. The more one person gives without limits, the more others adjust their expectations upward until generosity becomes the baseline. Adrian's family did not wake up one day suddenly cruel. Their entitlement grew over time, watered by his patience and his silence. When he finally reclaimed his space, what collapsed was not love. What collapsed was dependence disguised as love. And perhaps the quietest but most powerful part of this story lies in what happened afterward. The moment Adrian removed himself from the role of provider, reality returned. His brother disappeared. His parents suddenly found the ability to work again. The world did not end. In fact, the balance that had been missing finally began to reappear. Sometimes the greatest act of care you can offer others is forcing them to stand on their own feet. Not because you wish them harm, but because enabling their weakness only traps everyone involved in the same cycle. So the real question this story leaves behind is uncomfortable but important. If keeping peace in your family required you to sacrifice your dignity, your security, and the life you worked for, would you protect the peace or would you finally protect yourself?